one hour. We are about to, what I wanted to do before I introduce the speakers to you, walk you through a few basic things. Just a reminder to all colleagues that interpretation in Chinese and in Russian is available, and you by now already know how to choose the channels. A reminder to all of you that we are going to be recording this session. These sessions will be available to you later on the southsouthpoint.net as well as on the eCampus course page. We will have today's session is going to follow this particular sequence. We will first invite Mr. Sher Verick, who I will introduce shortly, to make a reflection on the recommendations of the group work on key takeaways and action points that have been identified as path forward throughout the 6 weeks that we have been working together, which will be followed by a formal closing ceremony for which we have an equally exciting array of speakers as we have from ILO today. So without much ado and being conscious of time, I invite Sher Verick to share with us a few of his thoughts. And before he takes the floor, I want to introduce you to Sher, a dear friend, as well as a dear friend of both Anita and I, but more importantly, a dear friend of the work that we do, both in his current role and in his previous role in India. He is the head of employment strategies unit in the employment employment department, and which in itself is part of the employment, labor markets and youth branch of the ILO, and is based in Geneva. Prior to this position, and I alluded to it briefly, he was manager of the employment policy and analysis program here at the Turin Center, and before that, the deputy director of the ILO Decent Work team for South Asia and country office for India. And therefore, he comes with very high credentials to be able to speak on BRICS. He has also worked for the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa and various research institutions in Europe and Australia. He holds a master's degree in development economics from the Australian National University and a doctorate in economics from the University of Bonn. Since December 2004, he is a research fellow of the Institute for Labor Economics, IZA, which many of you know very well. Through various roles, he has led and undertaken policy-oriented research and training to promote the design and implementation of more effective employment policies. He has published in a range of journals and has authored or edited a number of volumes, including Transformation of Women at Work in Asia, an Unfinished Development Agenda, published in 2016, Perspectives on Labor Economics for Development in 2013, and The Labor Markets for Emerging Economies in 2013. So, without much ado, share your floor. We are all looking forward to hearing your remarks. Over to you, Sher.
Well, great. Thank you very much, Snehal and Anita, for this opportunity. It is a real pleasure to be with you for this last webinar as part of the BRICS CIS dialogue on formalization of the informal economy. And I would just stress at the outset, this very timely and very important issue. I think, we all recognize informality has been a major challenge for many years. It's been a feature of labor markets forever. And of course, countries have been struggling with the process of formalization, and new forms of informality have also emerged in recent years. But then I would stress that, of course, during the COVID-19 crisis, we have seen the vulnerability of this part of the economy and the labor market. And in particular, informal workers and businesses have suffered much more than formal ones as a result of the lockdown measures we've seen around the world. So, those operating in formal economy have been prevented from continuing their businesses, etc. That has hit the incomes and livelihoods of those people very hard. And at the same time, many countries have sought to, support informal economy through different policy measures, but we also know many fall through the cracks. So, they've been, very vulnerable during the crisis, both as a result of the containment measures and also, gaps in policy responses. And so, this is a very timely discussion, and it's really important to think about what needs to happen in order to improve our understanding and policy response to this very complex and challenging set of issues. I think you would all agree informality is multidimensional, heterogeneous, and very complex ultimately. But in this, this regard, I would like to congratulate you for the work you've done on the recommendations and action points. And I just want to share a few thoughts from my end on what you've done and highlight potential areas that could be focused on. And I think the set of recommendations that you have all produced are very comprehensive and covers a range of issues and approaches, which is indeed important given the multidimensional nature of informality, as I pointed out. I can see, and there are 4 key areas that come out across the recommendations. Firstly, the research and analysis that needs to happen, and I would really support that because we still know too little about the informal economy. It's been so hidden for years despite its prevalence. And then, during the COVID crisis, we've had this additional impact that needs to be better understood. I also see the emphasis on the care economy, which is also very timely and needs further research as ways of, promoting formalization. So this block on research analysis, I think, is very well placed. A second block that comes out in the recommendations you provided is around the policy responses and a whole range of actions that are linked to policy level. And obviously the focus is not just to understand informality, but is to promote formalization. This is why you've come together. This is, the essence of the challenges that policymakers are facing. And I just wanted to flag, and I think it's very particularly interesting what you've placed under recommendation 6 in terms of responding to the issues around informality and the need to promote formalization in the context of the COVID-19 crisis. And as I've already mentioned, this is extremely timely, very important. And I think what is absolutely critical there is to build on the evidence. And again, we don't have enough. So it goes back to the first block on research analysis. We need more, but build on this evidence over time to shape better policy responses, right? So we can respond better next time a crisis hits. And we know this will not be the last crisis, though it continues to drag on much longer than any of us expected this time last year or in the past. So, we're still very much in the crisis, but we also know what is critical is preparing the labor market and particularly the most vulnerable workers and businesses for the next one. So I think this is very well placed in terms of, shaping, improving policy responses. The third block that I would flag is the focus, and a very strong focus I can see in the recommendations on partnerships, exchange, cooperation. And clearly there is a critical role for, of course, yourselves, the BRICS and CIS countries, different institutions, different levels to cooperate, obviously also with the ILO. And, there the challenge, of course, is getting the right set of actors together and having coherence and also maintaining that collaboration. Finally, a fourth area that comes out strongly, and it's also not surprising, is the emphasis on capacity building and training. And there's a number of key important action points there, ranging from a massive online open course to other type of training activities. And clearly, there is a lot that can be done in terms of strengthening capacities to understand the nature of the problems and the policy responses. So building on those other blocks, because COVID has thrown up a whole range of new questions, new challenges. We need to continue to update our understanding. But just to finish off, I just want to, of course, flag that, when we have recommendations and action points, our focus should be, of course, on how to make sure this happens. And, I would stress the importance of looking at the structure and how the follow-up is done, of course, where this will be housed, who's going to be leading, coordinating the follow-up to these recommendations. Obviously, there's a role for the ILO, there's a role for the countries here, and this important to have some clarity on that as well going forward. And the commitment is clearly there, but it will be really taking advantage of this collaboration in a very focused way. And within those recommendations, having a clear set of priorities as a first step would be one way of taking it forward. So what are the 3 areas that could be worked on in the short term to get some of the collaboration going? And I'll come back with a couple of suggestions on that. And obviously having some resources put in to see these recommendations come to light would be absolutely critical. So just in terms of some areas that could be focused on, I will just flag 3 of them that I think can be done in the short term. 3 quick wins, let's say. Firstly, on the research agenda we've talked about, and really focusing on the COVID impact and response in terms of informality, with a view to building our knowledge of what works in terms of protecting informal workers and businesses, but also promoting formalization. Second, this partnership and cooperation element. What one platform can be used to get to support the collaboration between the BRICS and the CIS with the ILO and other partners. And thirdly, obviously, there's one capacity building program could be focused on as a follow-up to this program. The MOOC could be one way of not deepening your understanding. You will never go into that depth in a MOOC, but a MOOC can be useful for sharing information and raising awareness amongst a larger set of colleagues and participants. But of course, as I said, this requires, of course, the ownership and leadership and resources. And I think, with the commitment that you have shown here, then this can be done. So just to finish off, obviously these are critical issues that will continue to be the critical issues at the ILO and for all your countries. The focus on informality and in particular supporting formalization. And I'm sure they will be important issues for discussion under the Chinese presidency in the next round of the BRICS next year. And so there's an opportunity to do some of the legwork now to support those discussions on different elements within this broad agenda that could be well placed to contribute to the discussions next year under the Chinese BRICS presidency. I'll stop here, but thank you all for listening, and of course to Snehal and Anita for this opportunity, for sharing my thoughts on the hard work you've done on this recommendation, and hopefully the suggestions I've provided will help you move forward. Back to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sher. Thank you. And what the one thing that I note from one very important thing that I note from your intervention is it's great to come up with all these recommendations and action points, but it's important where they're housed, and of course the different roles that we all have to play, be it ILO, be it countries, be it the South-South and Triangular Cooperation led teams, be it BRICS, be it CIS. You would be happy to know that a number of colleagues who are responsible for a number of these issues are in the call today, but have also been involved in the entire webinar series from ILO Moscow, from ILO China, from colleagues from the ESA, as well as, and also have been involved in facilitating the group work. So they are well aware of the challenges that you broke. You would hold us to account when we invite you for the next year for a similar event, hopefully face-to-face, but let's see. But also remembering the fact that indeed, at least for the BRICS, the presidency, it moves on to China, and we know from previous conversations that we have had from colleagues, they are very keen to take the action points that we come up with forward. So we will come back to you. We will also invite you back next year, Sher. Thank you for these interventions. I move us forward. The next speaker, we actually will come back towards the end of the end of the interventions. If people have any questions, comments, briefly. So I just want to move forward. The next speaker is actually the director ad interim for the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation, Mr. Adil Abdul Latif. He was very keen to join the webinar himself, but unfortunately, due to other pressing commitments, he couldn't come himself. So we have actually a video that he had prepared and sent it to us. But before Anita plays the video, I wanted to quickly introduce him to you. He is, as I mentioned, the director ad interim for the UN OSOC, and was appointed to the position on September 17th, 2020. Before joining his current role, he has served as Deputy Director and Senior Strategic Advisor in the Regional Bureau for Arab States of UNDP. In that capacity, he coordinated the work of the UNDP country offices in 16 countries in the Arab region. He advised on UNDP policies in the region to identify the strategic, regional, and national priorities, and led the strategy for implementing the 2030 agenda of for the sustainable development in Arab countries. Mr. Abdul Latif further provided analysis of emerging trends and formulated strategies and briefings for UNDP leadership. In addition, he headed the team that produced the UNDP flagship Arab Human Development Report. Also, in his work with UNDP, he took the lead in launching key UNDP regional initiatives in the Arab States region, including those on good governance, climate resilience, water governance, regional trade facilitation, social cohesion, and women's empowerment. He supervised the publication by UNDP of several reports and papers, initiated the launch of the Arab Knowledge Report in partnership with the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Foundation in the UAE. Mr. Abdul Latif comes to the UNDP following a 2-decade career at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Egypt, serving in several embassies and earning the rank of ambassador. He holds a doctoral degree in political economy from the Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies, Geneva, Switzerland. I am aware I spoke too quickly for our dear interpreters, but one of the disadvantages of having a high-level panel like today is that the formal introductions, which are necessary and important, are long. I will paste the introductions also in the chat box so you are able to read them. And this point, I request Anita to please play the message that Mr. Abdul Latif has prepared for us.
Yes, thanks so much, Sneha. And also just a little point that he actually couldn't come here because of the time difference. It's 5 a.m. in New York. So he was actually very keen. And being here, it was not really he would have to wake up at 4 a.m., which would be a little brutal and not decent work, right? So anyway, let me try to share the video and hope that it works in terms of the recording.
I wish to congratulate International Labour Organization and the governments and private industry from the BRICS countries on their successful convening of this event, highlighting the importance of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation, sharing of knowledge on an integrated approach towards formalization of workers in the Commonwealth of Independent States. This discussion has been especially timely. The pandemic has brought into focus severe and systemic inequalities, negatively affecting vulnerable population. For the first time in 30 years, poverty is rising, human development indicators are declining. According to ILO estimates, the pandemic is expected to trigger a 60% decline in earnings for the world's 1.6 billion informal workers. Informal workers have little to no access to social protection. The UN is particularly concerned about the impact on vulnerable populations, especially in the global south, migrants, refugees, women, children, older persons, persons with disabilities, indigenous peoples, and those working in the informal sector, especially in countries with weaker health systems, already facing existing humanitarian crisis. In fact, the UN Secretary General, in his policy brief on investing in jobs and social protection for poverty eradication and a sustainable recovery, points out that the impacts of COVID-19 on the world of work have disproportionately impacted the most vulnerable, especially women in the informal economy. Important steps to recovery include targeting measures to formalize informal sector workers while leveraging the leadership of women and young people who face greater economic vulnerability as their labor participation is often highly informal. Formalization and addressing the challenges of the informal sector is an important agenda of the Global South. It is an essential pathway for reducing vulnerabilities and building resilience to shocks, reducing poverty, and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Countries of the Global South have developed and implemented innovative and integrated approaches of formalization, which have led to significant results. We must share these successes. Together, we must build a global partnership and strengthen multilateralism toward mitigating COVID-19 and future emergencies, impacts on livelihoods, especially for women, youth, and informal workers. South-South cooperation represents one important modality of this partnership. Knowledge sharing is one of the central pillars of the work of the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation. The United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation has several platforms: South-South Galaxy, South-South Global Thinkers, Global South-South Development Expo, that we encourage you to leverage to advance South-South knowledge sharing and partnership brokering. Finally, we look forward to your report on the sessions of this meeting, which we will ensure we disseminate widely among South-South stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anita, and thank you for confirming that it was indeed the time difference that makes it difficult for him. Thank you for that. Indeed, many important points made. We will, of course, be sharing with him the recommendations, which we actually already have, but we would also make sure that we are able to therefore then invite him once again to be part of our continuing conversation. So thank you, Mr. Abdul Latif, for the time, even though he's not here, and colleagues in his office. I now keep moving forward. The next speaker is again a friend, a personal friend, but also a friend of the center, but also a friend of the idea of South-South cooperation, and in this case, also someone who has been involved in the South-South on the BRICS research, Labor Research Institute network that he is going to introduce us to. Our next speaker is Dr. Anup K. Satpathy, who is actually working as a fellow, that is faculty at the V.V. Giri National Labor Institute since 2002 in Delhi, in India. He is an economist by training and holds an MPhil and PhD degree in economics from the Center for the Study of Regional Development from the Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. He has more than 20 years of research, training, and monitoring evaluation experience in the area of labor and employment, with special emphasis on informal economy, wage policy and minimum wages, vocational education and skills development, social security, and child labor. He has been associated as a member of the national level commissions, technical committees such as Planning Commission Subgroup on Creating Employment Opportunities during the 12th Five-Year Plan, Steering Committee on Training of Trainers of the Director General Employment and Training, Ministry of Labor and Employment, core group for collection and analysis of data in respect of social security to workers, again under the Ministry of Labor and Employment, Interministerial Committee on drafting of the National Employment Policy, and drafting committee on central rules relating to the code on wages. He has also represented the Government of India in the ILO as an informal economy expert relating to ILO recommendation on transitioning from the informal to the formal economy in 2013-14 and in Delhi group meetings on informal sector statistics. In 2018, he also chaired the expert committee on determining methodology for fixation of national minimum wage constituted by the Ministry of Labor and Employment. His CV indeed is very impressive, like I said about all other panelists, but in deference to time, I invite Dr. Satpathy to take the floor and provide us with this intervention. Dr. Satpathy, your floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Snehal, and also to Anita for inviting me and giving this floor to talk on the BRICS CIS dialogue and the recommendation that you have prepared. I have gone through that, and also I would like to share what we're doing as a part of because the objective also is to frame a broader collaborative framework with the CIS countries, with the BRICS network that is already existing. So I will first highlight what we are doing and how we are doing, and what are the successful things that we have done, and basically stressing upon the fact that this sort of collaborative approach has worked, and if it is broadened to CIS, it will also work. And the second part, I will be focusing on the recommendation and what can be done. So as far as the BRICS network of research institute is concerned, as you might be knowing, for the first time it came up during 2017, and there was a need that the leaders conference required technical support in terms of preparation of various documents, and that's how the network came up. And since 2017, the network has actively worked, the Labor Research Network has actively worked in terms of preparing the background notes for the BRICS meeting. And apart from that, as an outcome of the BRICS meeting, also the network has, as of now, has conducted 4 research studies on issues like skill development, on issues like youth employment, and the last research that was conducted under Russia's presidency was on the impact of pandemic on labor market. And at present, this year India had the presidency of BRICS, and one of the topic was formalization of employment. And in this year, although formalization of employment is one topic that has been discussed time and again in various BRICS meetings, because it is a cross-cutting subject. You talk of social security, you talk of new forms of employment, you talk of employment per se. So always informal economy or some elements of formalization policies are discussed in the BRICS meeting. But as far as the exclusive agenda item is concerned, it was discussed in 2016 under India's presidency. It was discussed again in 2021 under India's presidency. So there are 2 meetings of BRICS which exclusively had an agenda item focused on the overall informal economy. And in this year, with colleagues from other countries also, we prepared the background note. And interestingly, one of the recommendations that has come out from the Leaders Summit is to prepare a research report on digitization, because there are very many digital or new technology is used in a big way, and how that new technology used is facilitating formalization. So that would be the topic for this year's research area for all the BRICS network of countries. We have already prepared a proposal and it is at present at the discussion stage, and then we'll be doing the research itself, and the report will be presented subsequently. And in this entire activities of the BRICS Network of Research Institute, ILO has all along has extended support, and there is a BRICS DEX in ILO. And when I was preparing the issue paper on formalization of labor market, the people from headquarters like Florence, Philip, all were giving their input to that issue paper. So there is a channel that exists through which, or there is a coordination committee. In this time, we had a committee in which faculty from Network of Research Center were there, and then the focal point from the country offices and focal point from the headquarters were also there. So, so there is a mechanism that exists to make things happen, not only in the context of preparing the issue paper, but also in terms of executing the research. So at some stage or the other, there is a coordination across country level and coordination also with ILO and also with the ministries and through the research network with the relevant ministries in the country. So this is the mechanism that exists, that has worked, and most importantly, we have able to timely deliver the work. Not that the work got delayed, it was always on time. So this is the achievement or the progress that has happened until now, and if there is a extension to this approach in terms of linking it to CIS, then that would also be welcomed. The second aspect I would like to focus is on the recommendation. As Sher has already mentioned that the key areas of the recommendation are research, on training, on policy making, and also on cooperation. And also I found that there was a stress on collaborative approach involving the Department of Statistics and Ministry of Statistics on this issue. This is very important, research is very important. And what I would like to say is that the drivers of informality in each of these BRIC countries are very different. And I am sure the drivers of informality in CIS countries would be different. We must focus on the drivers because the drivers are not generic across countries. So we must focus, because I want to highlight in the context of South Asia per se, the supply of labor force is quite high, and even if government is focusing on employment and other aspects to create employment, but it is unable to create adequate number of employment because the supply of labor force is very high. So whatever may be the effort, still you have a problem. So so how the policy has to be linked with the drivers, that is very important. And as 204 focuses on sequencing of policy or a gradual transition in the policy, so those aspects in the research needs to be inbuilt very categorically, because in BRICS, every country has policies relating to formalization. There may not be explicit policy. So the one aspect is that how we can make policy explicit. There may be policy, but these policies are not under the tag that it is an employment formalization policy. There may be a skill development policy, there may be other policies, but when you are talking about direct formalization and formalization indirectly, so we have to see that how we can focus on these aspects. And as Sher has already mentioned, coherence in the policy is very important. We have too many policies, but if you see, this coherence is somewhat one issue that needs to be built in. Some countries has coherence, some countries has to prioritize this, and of course, training and other activities needs to be done on this area, because there is not much clarity in many contexts about what constitutes informality. For example, the 17th ICLS definition, in many countries, the 17th ICLS definition has not been accepted officially. to some extent, therefore, official data does not produce by the statistical office a report. And they may be collecting data, but they are not producing a report. And unless and until they are not producing a report, it is sometimes difficult to convince them about the magnitude and size of the informality. In India, for example, we have data, but there is no, we does research, we produce figure, but that figure should come from offices so that they understand the different components of informality, the characteristics of informality, the drivers of informality, so that you can link the policies after doing the diagnostic. So diagnostic is important. And unfortunately, many countries do not have exclusive report on formalization policy. So what are the policies that is existing, how we can see or document those policies, best practices, although the global report, ILO's various report give some idea about good practices, but unless and until a kind of country-specific approach is not done, and then what are the gaps that have not been identified. So all these activity, training, research, or coordination, collaboration should be focused around this kind of research so that it would be more meaningful and also be translated into policy rather than doing it independently of each other. So with this, I will like to stop, and I'm sure other colleagues are here also to speak after me. So thank you for both of you to give me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Satpathy. Thank you for those interventions, and thank you for reminding us the importance of collecting data and using that in the formation of policy and the current status and the learning that you yourself have had and led as part of the conversations that you led with colleagues under BRICS and how that could be useful for CIS. Thank you. We move forward to the second last speaker of the day, and it is my absolute pleasure to invite Mr. Marcelo Abirramia Castaño, who is the ISA Secretary General, and ISA, for those of you who do not know or may not know, is the International Social Security Association. He was elected in December 2018, and he heads an extensive program of activities and member services which is focused on promoting excellence in Social Security administration, including the development of ISA's professional guidelines and Center for Excellence Innovative Solutions to address key social security challenges, unique data on social security around the world, as well as regional and global events. Mr. Castaño was elected on a vision to strengthen ISA's outreach and impact on social security through enhanced member services, governance, financing, and communication. Prior to his current role, he served as the Secretary for Social Security of the Government of Brazil, with the responsibility for designing, monitoring, and developing a responsive and sustainable social security system in the country. Mr. Marcelo is Brazilian economist holding a PhD degree from the Catholic University of Brasilia and has extensive academic and managerial experience in social security. Between July 1998 and August 2005, he was the coordinator for actuarial work, accounting, and technical studies of the Ministry of Social Security in Brazil. After 6 years as a senior researcher on social security at Brazil's prestigious Institute of Applied Economic Research, he became the coordinator for social security, assistance, demography, inequality, and poverty in IPEA, which is indeed the Institute for Applied Economic Research, between 2012 and 16. And then he served as Secretary of Social Security in Brazil from May 2016 to December 2018. Mr. Marcelo, your floor, sir.
Thank you. So, colleagues, first of all, let me send greetings from the International Social Security Association, which unites over 300 social security institutions from 106 countries. It's with great pleasure that I welcome the speakers, so Cher Verick from the ILO, Abdel Abdelatif, Director of the UNOSSC, Anoop Sapafati, Senior Fellow of the Giri Labor Resource Institute in New Delhi, and Hao Bin, Director General of the Department of International Cooperation of the Ministry of Human Resource and Social Security, MOHRSS, China. So in my capacity as ISA Secretary General, I would like to thank the organizers for their kind invitation to the ISA and to the ISA ILO BRICS Virtual Liaison Office in particular. We are very pleased to contribute to this valuable knowledge exchange, which has been jointly organized by the ILO, PETPREV, Geneva, ILO Moscow, ILO Turin, and ILO Delhi. I'm sure you would agree that this joint effort has been a success, as it revealed good practice and generated useful ideas on how to build responsive and comprehensive solutions towards minimizing the level of the informal economy in the BRICS and CIS countries. Informality is a challenge for the world of work and one of the concerns in the BRICS and CIS countries. Our discussions tackled aspects of informality related to the changing nature of the work, inclusivity, gender inequality, labor migration, as well as the role of social protection for sustainable and equitable economic development. This role could hardly be overestimated. So why are we talking today on the special role of social security informalization? Simply because labor and social protection make a single ecosystem. Economic growth feeds the social security, which in turn invests in human capital. And the latter is the main driving force of the successful formalization of the labor market. Failure to provide adequate social security limits the prospects for well-being, human capital development, and consequently economic growth. Indeed, it is true to say that without social security coverage, it is difficult to talk about inclusive societies, social cohesion, and even social peace. From the various industrial and technological revolutions, social security institutions around the world have developed a wide range of methods to address informality, which makes social security administrations key partners of national governments in their endeavor to meet the challenge. The famous Russian writer Leo Tolstoy said, "All happy families are alike, but each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way." This quote perfectly fits the point that although the BRICS and CIS countries differ from each other in terms of their culture, historical, and economic background, and therefore are differently affected by informality, they can successfully cooperate in the exchange of knowledge to identify and implement the most suitable solutions enshrined in the ILO conventions and recommendations, as well as in the ISA guidelines on social security administration. Talking about informality and the role of social security, we should always keep in mind that social security institutions across the world have a mandate to provide social protection to people who are formally registered with them. And if someone is not registered or registered incorrectly, that individual is not visible to social security institutions and therefore has no or a limited access to social protection. There are two potential reasons for this. The registration system is faulty, or the person doesn't have an official employment relationship with the employer. Thus, accurate and effective registration of participants in any social security program is not only one of the most important functions of the social security management, but also one of the tools to prevent informality. However, registrations will not be an easy task for social security authorities in countries where reliable civil registration systems have to be established. Another challenge is how to reach difficult to cover groups of the population, such as agricultural, domestic, migrant, and platform workers. And the next difficult question is how to ensure contributions compliance of the self-employed persons. All these questions need answers, and ISA receives them from its members in all parts of the world. Another tool for formalization are international agreements. At the government level, the signature of bilateral as well as multilateral social security agreements can effectively reach migrant or seasonal workers, avoid double social security taxation, and mitigate the cost of dispatching enterprise and dispatched employees. At the enterprise level, it is a must to obtain a complete understanding of the relevant labor and social security law and regulations. The role of the national labor and social security authorities can never be overestimated, as their information and advice will facilitate the social security compliance of the relevant enterprise, and a sound cooperative tie between the relevant national social security institutions can accelerate the settlement of compliance issues which emerge. To ensure compliance, we need to think about good and reliable governance, which is only possible if it is based on solid ICT support. In addition, we should always keep in mind anti-fraud measures to prevent and combat non-compliance issues, such as underreporting of hired staff or evasion of contributions. To this purpose, the ISA has conducted a large number of events dedicated to anti-fraud methods and measures that can be implemented at low cost with the help of the ICT technology available in social security institutions. Moreover, to address informality, social security institutions are implementing various communication strategies. For instance, this means public awareness campaigns through which the population receives information about their rights to social benefits if their relationship with the employer is formal. This approach encourage employees to switch to work under the terms of formal employment contract. In some countries, the culture of social security, which explains the need for formal employment and the payment of tax and social contributions, is incorporated as a mandatory discipline into school programs. This forms a responsible attitude of future employees to compliance with social and labor legislation. Details of such approach can be found in the ISA Good Practices database or in the relevant ISA guidelines. I also strongly recommend the reading of the BRICS and CIS dialogue recommendations and actions plans, points on formalization of the informal economy that the organizers of these events can make available to you all. Summing up the ways and methods that social security use to solve informal problems, I would once again highlight them. First, political will. Second, a strong registration system based on ICT technologies. Third, international social security agreements. Fourth, targets anti-fraud policy. And fifth, communication campaigns and promotion of social security culture. Dear colleagues, we have come to the end of the webinar, and I am pleased to emphasize the importance of integrating South-South cooperation into the BRICS CIS dialogue. I am sure that by working together for the benefits of the BRICS and CIS countries, we are creating new added value, not only for our members, but also for, and most important, for the population that makes up half of the inhabitants of our planet. So thank you for your attention, and I take this opportunity to invite those who are not yet a member of the ISA to join our large and friendly family. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Marcelo. Thank you. And thank you also for the invitation on behalf of all the participants and you make important points. And I think it is also a good reminder for all of us that we all in the formal economy at least benefit hugely from the work that you and other colleagues have done, continue to do, and will be doing in the future. Thank you. And this brings us to the last speaker, but the most one of the most important speakers for the day. And it is my pleasure to invite Mr. Hao Bin, who is the Director General of the Department of International Cooperation at the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security of the People's Republic of China, which is one of the state council ministries responsible for employment, social insurance, and labor relations, among others. In his over 27 years working experience at China's central government agencies, he has served at both capital as well as Chinese diplomatic missions in various posts. As the Director General, he leads the work of the Department of International Cooperation of the Ministry on substantial multilateral, bilateral issues relating to employment, labor, human resources development, and social security, and also represents China as a delegate, as the head of delegation, to be specific, at the ILO, International Social Security Association, G20, and the BRICS labor and employment tracks, and other important international fora. It is also our pleasure to invite Mr. Hao Bin to take the floor as China is going to hold the next presidency of the BRICS. Mr. Hao Bin, your floor, sir.
Thank you very much, moderator. Good evening, friends. Moderator Sonaji and co-moderator Amorim and Secretary General Katania. So it's such a great pleasure for me and also colleagues from the Indian Labor Research Institute, Mr. Sas Pasi. So it's such a pleasure for me to be able to meet friends, old friends and new. And I'm very happy to be invited to attend this virtual BRICS CIS dialogue. This dialogue focuses on knowledge sharing on an integrated approach toward formalization in the CIS. It has shared a great deal of insight and experiences, just as our colleagues mentioned a few moments ago, the recommendations, the multiple action points from the course participants. So I'm certain that they will be very useful for the constituents of ILO members to draw on in their efforts to improve job qualities and the protection of our workers. So I wanted to congratulate the organizer for the success of this knowledge sharing activity, these knowledge sharing activities. Organizing international activities requires a lot of work, and it's much more even so in a situation when the global pandemic continue make impact in world work. But the fact that so many members from the BRICS countries and beyond attend the activities speaks for not only the significance and relevance of the project, but also demonstrated great effort that part of and other partners put. So I wanted to, on behalf of my ministry, I wanted to thank ILO Pardev along with ILO Turin Center, ILO Moscow, and ILO Delhi, and all other colleagues who have contributed significantly and greatly to make this meeting possible. So thank you very much. And I'm also very pleased that we, some of our colleagues from the Chinese constituents, government, and social partners participated in the event. And I hope that they contributed their fair share to this event. And we mentioned South-South cooperation. I think it is a very important topic. And South-South cooperation is a central part of a developing country's endeavor to seek strength through unity. ILO, as a leading international organization to promote social justice and through decent work, has played an important role to contribute to this lofty cause. And my ministry, the Ministry of Human Resources, has taken some concrete measures to promote the South-South cooperation with the international labor organizations. In the recently held Joint Review Committee meeting, at which both my minister, Minister Zhang Jinan, and the Director General Guy Ryder, attended, the two sides had an in-depth dialogue on the South-South cooperation toward promoting a human-centered recovery. Director General Ryder and my Vice Minister, Mr. Chang Tao, signed an amendment to the partnership agreement for the provision of a promotion development cooperation with a focus on South-South initiative. This represents, of course, a renewed commitment of China and my ministry to the development cooperation with the International Labour Organization in the field of labor and employment. So my department is a department responsible for implement this plan, is ready to work with you, part of, and colleagues to ensure the progress success. Dear colleagues, China is in its first year of the 14th five-year period. This 14th five-year plan is guided by new development philosophy, featuring establishing a new development pattern where domestic and foreign markets can boost each other, with domestic market at the mainstay. In this plan, employment and improving the well-being of our people is a very important part, and protecting the worker in the flexible employment has been highlighted. So in this connection, I would like to say a few words regarding the China's efforts to protect workers in the flexible employment. In 2020, the number of flexible workers in China stood around 200 million, with 84 million service providers for the sharing economy. Among them, the majorities were platform workers and workers in new form of employment, to whom the existing labor law framework could not be applied. Faced with these issues and challenges, my government has given top priorities to protection of workers in the new employment. And there are several areas where we have made quite some efforts. The first one is certainly establish right protection system that is suitable to the new type of employment, and also promoting the business startup to help to nurture a ecosystem is also very much emphasized. And we are also trying to establish a legal mechanism to strengthen the protection of workers' rights and interest. These are some of the areas where in the future that China will be working to protect and protect the people working in the flexible employment. Our colleagues mentioned that next year would be China's presidency for the BRICS, and while the preparation work is still underway, I just wanted to highlight and some areas where we think we will be working in partnership with the International Labour Organization, in partnership with the ISA and the BRICS Research Network to develop the topics of the employment working group and leading up to the ministerial meeting. So one important topic would be employment service improvement for human-centered and resilient recovery. This one is based on, we hope that we'll be utilizing the good practice of all the BRICS countries to address unemployment amid the pandemic and sharing experiences of building a sound environment for business startup. And we also wanted to discuss promoting inclusive skills development and cooperation to narrow inequality, including addressing the digital gap, advancing quality apprenticeship, etc. Another point likely topic could be enhancing right protection of labor in the new form of employment. So these are some of the areas China will be working for the next year's BRICS ministerial meeting. And in this course, certainly cooperation is very, very important, and support from the International Labour Organization, the ISA, and BRICS Research Network are extremely important. So we wanted to make our next year's ministerial meeting a successful one. And to make it successful, we are very much looking forward to your cooperation and support. So in conclusion, I wanted to say, I look forward to sound cooperation between the BRICS and ILO in the next year, and hope we'll build up knowledge sharing in the South-South technical cooperation framework. We have a saying in China: a man of wisdom adopts to change, a man of knowledge acts by circumstances. And we, for next year, hopefully with the support of BRICS countries and our partners, we would be able to deliver a successful meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harbin, for those excellent remarks. We all, I can confirm to you, having been part of every single webinar that we have had this year, we are all eagerly looking forward to the Chinese presidency and the work that the good work that we have done in this group, feeding into the work that will indeed take place, and also how we can learn, including the CIS countries and others who could learn from it. Our colleagues in ILO, China will surely be getting in touch with you through the regular channels to continue this dialogue series, so that we can all benefit to learn from it. Colleagues, that is the end of the intervention from the so-called the virtual dais. We have time still for some comments, for some reflections, and I already want to tell our four presenters and our keynote speaker from ILO that I might come back to you for your final thoughts, for your summary, and I might give each of you 1 minute at the end of it, depending on how many questions we get for your reflections, if any. Again, not obligatory at all. Colleagues, this is participants, this is your opportunity to ask questions, reflect on the things that you have heard today from this very distinguished panel and the distinguished keynote speaker that we've had today. Please raise your hand, and Anita, who is co-moderating with me, will also help me spot raise of hands that I may have missed. Colleagues, over to you. Please remember, you are able to ask questions in the language of your choice. That is either Russian, English, or Chinese, because we have the benefit of our wonderful interpreters who are here today, but also have been here throughout the 6 weeks that we have had this webinar series for. Over to you. If there are any questions, any reflections. Anita, I see you're trying to say something. Is that true?
Yes, I was going to wait a little bit, but I was going to use my different hat as a, not co-moderator, but as to ask a question, even though that's a little unfair, but I was trying to wait if there's other hands. But anyway, I'll just do it very quickly. I wanted to, first of all, thank all the panelists very profusely for their very enthusiastic presentations. And I have a question for Marcelo and one for Harbin. So starting with Harbin, first of all, thank you so much for this support from China, because you have been, your ministry in particular, supporting the ITC Turin Training Center with the summer academies and with different projects and proposals dealing with BRICS, both and Snehal have been able to even do some programs thanks to the support. So that was the first point. The second is also thanks to the current support for the skills project that actually Mr. Yutong Liu, that is here, the Chief Technical Advisor on skills in ASEAN. I wanted to ask you, how would you envisage, in the light of all this support, the upcoming BRICS having your presidency? I know you gave some clues mentioning the employment and the formalization of informal economy and social security as key areas. But I think it would be great that, to give visibility as well. So I think that's one of the questions that always comes to my mind, is that sometimes these things happen, but we don't get the proper visibility. So I think that was one. And for Marcelo Caetano, in terms of you also have a very extraordinary mechanism, which is this BRICS liaison office. I would have a similar question, how to make it more visible and accessible to others. For Cher, it was just a real thanks that you have managed to analyze so well the recommendations, and the same for Anup Satpathy. Thanks so much for your analysis of the BRICS situation and what the ILO can do better. Over.
Great, thank you, Anita. Maybe Mr. Harbin first, and then Mr. Marcelo.
Thank you very much, Anita. Thank you for your kind words. And indeed, this is very important that we need to do things, and we should also need to let people know there are good things there, so that people can utilize. So I think it's the point that you raised is an extremely important one. Now, for the next year or moving forward, how would China make greater publicity and raise the visibility of what China has done? I think there are several ways through which that we can achieve that better result. One is utilizing the Chinese presidency for the next year, and that would be a big occasion. So we can, by using the presidency, we can have the opportunities to share with the world, with the BRICS countries, the important work that we have done. And second, and also very important, is to utilize an excellent platform of the International Labor Organization. We have international labor conferences, and we have various kind of activities organized by the International Labor Office, from the headquarters to the regional office and in Turin. So I think these are the platform that we can, working in partnership with these departments, that we can also raise visibility. And last but not the least is that we should not only raising the visibility is a very important thing, but to do a good and better job is equally important. I think would be the most important thing. So, we have several projects that we work with the office, try to promote and help and share China's experiences and help our colleagues, our developing partners. So I think we need also to work hard to deliver these projects, so that we can have good story really to share with the world. And in this respect, I look forward to work with, and I encourage the office, yes, to continue to the good work. And I certainly, as a partner, we will do our best to collaborate with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Harbin. Thank you for painting that picture of the priorities. Mr. Marcelo.
Okay, so thank you for your question. When we are talking about the strengthening of the liaison office for the BRICS countries in ILO, when we are talking about the strengthening, I always think that they are based on two major pillars. One pillar is networking, and the other one is knowledge promotion, knowledge sharing. Okay. So regarding networking, we in ISA, we have many different members, no, from countries. So from Brazil, we have some of them, from China as well, South Africa, India. So we have this great network, and we can use this network in order to strengthening the exchange of our members. So this can be done. And in these times of virtual meetings, it's even easier to do so because we can arrange the Zoom meetings. The difficult point here is the difference in time zones. But this is the first one, and this we have two people here from ISA that works quite closer to this, like Dimitri and Yukung, and they are there. They can provide this. The second point is the knowledge. Okay. I assume, for example, by the discussions that we are having today, that one topic that ISA has already created many reports, and also there is a guideline that can be interesting to work, is on the extension of coverage in Social Security. But to bring in mind that in ISA we work with the better implementation of the policies on Social Security, the innovation of the implementation of the policies on Social Security, not the policy itself, but the implementation of the policies. So I think that by the topics that we are discussing today, it can be, okay, I also believe in down from up, not just from up to down, but decisions, but I think that this can be one topic for discussions, and we have a good background, a good knowledge on it as well. So it's networking and knowledge sharing.
Networking and knowledge sharing, indeed, are the keywords, and I can tell you, Ms. Marcelo was one of the driving factors for us organizing this BRICS and CIS dialogue series, which brought together different points of view as well as different experiences, and I think that is reflected very well in the action points under the 6 recommendations that we worked on. I just want, there is already one hand that I see, and that belongs to, I'm scrolling down. Yeah, there you go. I see it is Angelica. Angelica, go ahead, your floor.
Thank you, Snehal. Happy to see you, and I'm very happy to be here. Just wanted to make a small comment, and perhaps I mean it's mostly a comment. Some of you already know that that I have been working in the CIS previously, and I am very much passionate about the region, as well as have been introduced to the work of the BRICS by Anita, which I find very interesting, and I would like to just congratulate everybody for the great work and for the linkages between the BRICS and the CIS. I think that regions that have come together in these type of groupings is very important for them to have this type of exchanges. And one thing I wanted just to highlight from my very personal interest and my visits to the CIS region, and I saw in the recommendations, was there was some notes on how this could perhaps support artistic sectors in the region. So I know that people both in the BRICS, but especially in the CIS, they have a lot of cultural things to share with the world. And I think that if they can be supported through the engagement that, for example, the Chinese culture is shared all around the world, but not so much the CIS culture. And many of the people that is working in these cultural sectors, they are in the informal economy. If some work can be done in that regard, in terms of implementation of these recommendations, from my perspective, will be excellent, because culture is a very important component of what these countries have to share. So thank you very much, Snehal and Anita and everybody for being there, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see an old friend. And thanks for your intervention. And indeed, you make an important point, Angelica. Most of the workers in the cultural sphere, in most cases, if not all, do not necessarily enjoy the benefits of the formalization, and also that stretches everything from handicrafts on one hand to performers on the other. So point well made. You all already have given, I think, an idea to many of our colleagues from ILO China and ILO Russia and ILO India on what could potentially be the backbone of a new project to bring in these specters which are not necessarily very well integrated into the formalization process. Moving on, I just want to give the largest, conscious of time. We have 7 more minutes. If I don't see any more hands, therefore I'm going to give 1 minute each. First to Dr. Satpathy, if he wants to take the floor for a quick reflection to conclude, and then I will come to share for another 1 minute conclusion if he wishes to. And then I want to say a few thank yous, and then Anita will close. But first, Dr. Satpathy.
Thank you, Mr. Snell, for giving me the floor, and it's a pleasure to hear all the colleagues after my submission, and congratulate on behalf of each one of us for successfully hosting this event, which is going to expand the South-South network to BRICS, not only to strengthen BRICS network, but also to extend the network to CIS countries. So this is one of the important development. And similarly, as you have mentioned in your recommendation, there are many BRICS good practices that is existing. And as I stressed, that we need to document these activities in terms of diagnostic and level notes on formalization that is happening, which has been done in case of Brazil to a great extent, but that has not been done in case of other BRICS countries. And I had attempted to make that during last India's conference, BRICS conference, which we have made a modest attempt. So this type of activities can be done, strengthened, and we are also trying to do, as far as the digital initiative for formalization is concerned, we are trying to, from the BRICS Networks of Research Institute, we are trying to do. It would be, we would be pleased to associate it if any further expansion in terms of activities that is happening as an outcome of this initiative, and also we can provide all necessary support in expansion. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Satpathy. Thank you so much. Let me share your floor. You have 1 minute.
Thank you, Snehal, and indeed, congratulations for concluding this series. And I think this has been a very useful discussion, and it's been very informative to listen to the other speakers in this session. And I would reiterate what Mr. Halbin had also flagged. I think the visibility is critical, and also the issue of doing a better job. So on the visibility, some of those recommendations go to the heart of that in some simple ways. For example, an online MOOC, massive open online course, is one way to expand access to the information that has been generated by the BRICS, by the CIS, and also the outcome of this series. It's something that would be quite practical to do. Of course, there are always limitations. Those in the informal economy may be excluded, but I think, you know, some concrete practical steps on visibility would be very important. And I think you have strong support from the countries here, and of course the partners of not just the ILO but ISA and others. So it'd be great to have some momentum on some of those activities next year, and look forward to supporting where we can from the Employment Policy Department, together with Turin and of course Anita and Pardev and other partners here today. That's something that we will look forward to participating and contributing where we can. Thank you. Back to you, Snehal.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you once again. That practically brings us to the end of this session, but also the end of this webinar series. I just wanted to take this opportunity to formally thank the four distinguished members of the panel today, Dr. Sapati, Mr. Harbin, Mr. Marcelo, and Mr. Abdul Latif, who joined us remotely, well, who sent us the video, but also Dr. Verick, share thank you for today's intervention. Dear participants, thank you for accompanying us over the past 6 weeks, and more importantly, for the work that you have done. As you have yourself seen, that work is just the beginning of what would continue to be a journey that we would therefore then hope to have you as part of when we move the conversation on the formalization to the next year, whether be it in the BRICS, whether be it in the CIS countries. I also want to thank colleagues from ILO Moscow, ILO Delhi, and the head of partnership development, who was instrumental in providing us the financial support along with ILO Moscow. I'm not going to take names, everybody's names, and ILO China and ILO Bangkok for a fear of missing someone out. I also want to thank the interpreters for not only for today, but for the services, excellent services that they have provided to us. My colleague Ariana, who is not here today, and last but not the least, Duncan and Anita, who I have partnered with. For the last word, though, to close the webinar, I would webinar and the webinar series. I would invite Anita to take the floor and close the webinar. Thanks, colleagues. Thank you, everyone. Back to Anita, over to you.
Thanks, Snehal. And we had agreed on a little script where I would thank everybody. So I see already thanks most of the people, but I'm going to do a bit like the Oscars, because some people here really deserve to have, I mean, our colleagues became, I have to tell you, Halbin, Marcelo, Cher, Anu, they became not only officers, but translators, video operators, camera recorders, and YouTube bloggers. So, I mean, it was really a versatile, unbelievable effort. So just again, thank to all of you panelists, in Turin, of course, Snehal and Ariana, but also my colleague Duncan Chando, who did notes, bios, and I mean, all sorts of scripts, and the summaries of the two papers that were the basic papers from Santosh Mehrotra and also Colin Williams on informality. By the way, these papers are being translated to the 3 languages of this workshop. This time we don't have Portuguese, unfortunately, but anyway, we will have access to these papers in languages. And I also wanted to thank from ILO Delhi, Satoshi Sasaki and Sudeep Tabadra, because they were very instrumental in the follow-up of the BRICS Slam. So I think that's a very critical support. From ILO Moscow, I really wanted to quote actually the colleagues Ramiro Pizarro, because he has done a lot of the work from the project itself on putting together BRICS and CIS, formalization of the informal economy. Gocha Alexandria, who had, from the workers' perspective, always reminding us of the importance of the workers' perspective and social dialogue. And also Vlado Kurozovic, who is here with us today. In fact, he was, of course, welcome to say any words in terms of ILO Moscow, but we didn't see any hands up, but thanks so much. And Karina Levina, who's one of those who actually has done translations, interpretations. You probably saw her messages. So really big thanks to her. From ILO Bangkok, Yu Tong Liu, as he's a bit ILO Bangkok and also some ILO China hat, and has done a lot of the translations and work on the group work. In fact, these colleagues I quoted also have been in the group works with the Russian group, the Chinese group. It's not that easy to handle. It looks very perfect when you see the recommendations. And there was also the Portuguese speaking group actually merged into the English group. So I was doing some on-the-spot translations as well. From my department, of course, my director that you already thanked, Julia Serena, who couldn't be here today. She's feeling sick, unfortunately, but she did a lot of work, and Angelica Munoz, who has just, she has two hats like Dantam, you know, they're both on PARDEV and ITC. So big thanks to them as well. And then I'm coming to the end, don't worry. And from ILO China, of course, Mr. Dai Xiaoshu and the director Zhang Li, who gave all the support, and I think a green light for Yutong to also speak on behalf of ILO China, even though he's sitting in Bangkok. And from ISA, definitely. So Marcelo can be proud of your staff, Dimitri and you, Kunzu, because they've given us, they even have reminded me that I sent like the wrong bios or the, or some things 2 times in Russian and no English. So they really have been part of the logistics. So right now, if you got several reminders, it was thanks to them because I was correcting au fur et à mesure. So thanks so much to Dimitri and Yukon. And with them, we had like a long history, because from the beginning of these BRICS informal meetings, we thought that it would be very interesting to have, some form of BRICS liaison office at that time. And now it actually became a reality. So Marcelo, we have the chance of being the leader in a way of the BRICS liaison office that exists. I think, I'm sure Hao Bin here is trying to think how he's going to take maximum support of that. And I'm sure that, that would be a fantastic thing, because we have at least, some kind of structure to hang some of the elements that we really want to continue working. I'm looking very much forward, and I'm sure my colleagues share and Sneha as well, for the Chinese presidency. I think it's going to be very interesting. And I think it's a good omen that we just signed an agreement now, the amendment to an agreement where I had the pleasure to listen to Hao Bin after our Director General, and looking forward to this additional support. Thank you very much, China, for this additional support. Of course, all the BRICS countries as well. And from Anup Satpati, I know you have an agreement with the ITC ILO Center, VVGIRIA, South-South Cooperation Agreement. So we hope this agreement will be further expanded in the following years, and that will be further reinforced. Last but not least, of course, I'd like to thank Adel Abdelatif, who is not here, but is a close friend of mine, from the director of the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation. So he has sent us really a very touching message, a very important message of solidarity. And he has emphasized the importance of BRICS CIS dialogue. And he has emphasized the importance that the BRICS countries have in the South-South Cooperation. So I think, with responsibility, with all this comes an important responsibility. And I love the quotes of today, from Tolstoy to Chinese saying. And it's true, I love in particular this quote from Anna Karenina, mentioning that happiness is always the same, and each sadness, each difficulty has its own face. And I think with the face of COVID-19, we have to think about these different unhappinesses and different difficulties, and really be at the service of the constituents. So we hope that next biennium we'll be able to do that. We thank you extremely warmly. And with this, I will consider this workshop closed. Thank you so much.